A kitchen in Cincinnati, 1953. A woman stands at the sink, hands deep in warm dishwater. Her cotton house dress is neat. Her hair is pinned tight. Her back is perfectly straight. Across the yard, a neighbor watches through a window. Not out of friendship. Out of surveillance. Something about that feeling seems familiar, the sense of being observed, judged, measured against rules nobody fully explains. Maybe you have felt it in a look. A comment. A quiet expectation hanging in the air. You cannot quite name it. But she could. The world she lived in was filled with rules that were never written down. No law books. No official lists. They did not need to exist on paper. Family, neighbors, coworkers, and strangers enforced them every single day. And when a woman crossed one of those invisible lines, the consequences could follow her for years. Before we uncover rule number 6, subscribe. This channel goes exactly where the history is. Hit that button, and let's go. To understand these rules, you first have to understand the world that created them. In the years after World War II, America was changing fast. New homes filled growing suburbs. New appliances promised easier lives. Magazines showed smiling families gathered around dinner tables. On the surface, it looked like comfort, stability, success. But hidden inside that picture was a social contract many women never agreed to. A respectable housewife was expected to look a certain way, speak a certain way, and live a certain way. People noticed everything. The condition of the front yard. The shine on the kitchen floor. The smell coming from the oven at supper time. And they talked. These expectations were not just neighborhood gossip. They appeared in etiquette books, women's magazines, church lessons, and marriage advice pamphlets. The message was repeated so often that it became part of everyday life. Good women followed the rules. Everyone else risked consequences. A careless mistake could damage a family's reputation. A rumor could close doors. In some cases, a woman could even face financial trouble or legal problems because she stepped outside what society expected. The rules were everywhere, even when nobody said them out loud. And the first one began the moment a woman stepped outside her front door. Rule number 6 was simple, but almost impossible to ignore. A woman did not leave the house without looking presentable. Not for the mailbox. Not for a quick trip to the store. Not even for a short walk across the yard. In Des Moines, Iowa, on a Tuesday morning in 1953, a woman watched the clock as carefully as she watched the oven. The postman was expected at 10. By 9:45, her hair was pinned neatly in place. Her house dress was gone. A proper day dress had taken its place. She was not expecting guests. She was preparing to cross the front door. That doorway meant more than it seemed. Stepping outside while wearing curlers, a robe, or yesterday's clothes could send a message she never intended to send. And people noticed. Neighbors talked. Husbands heard comments. Soon, whispers could spread that a household was losing its standards. In a world where a family's reputation affected friendships, opportunities, and community standing, those whispers mattered. Today, many people step outside in clothing designed for comfort above all else. Casual wear is everywhere. Looking relaxed is no longer seen as a problem. But in the 1950s, effort itself was the signal. And failing to show it could cost more than a woman expected. Rule number 5 lived in the kitchen, and it arrived every evening at 6 o'clock. Dinner had to be on the table. Not almost ready. Not started. Ready. By late afternoon, the house was already moving toward that moment. A pot roast might have been cooking since 3. The table was set before 5:30. Children washed their hands and took their seats. Every detail worked around one thing, the husband's arrival. His schedule was often known to the minute. Because the gravy could not wait. To many families, this looked normal. But it was more than a meal. It was proof. Proof that the household was running the way society expected it to run. And people paid attention. Advice books and marriage counselors of the era often treated a late dinner as a sign of poor household management. The meal was not judged by taste alone. It was judged by timing, preparation, and what it seemed to say about the woman who made it. If dinner was missing, questions followed. Was she organized enough? Was she taking her duties seriously? Was something wrong inside the home? Today, entire industries help people skip parts of the cooking process. Prepared meals arrive at the door. Ingredients come in boxes. Convenience is sold as freedom. But in the 1950s, there was no easy shortcut. The meal happened, every day, because failing to make it happen was barely considered an option. And the next rule followed women long after the dishes were cleared away. Rule number 4 began the moment he walked through the front door. The first hour of the evening belonged to him. In an Atlanta living room in 1956, the routine was already in motion before his car reached the driveway. The children were guided toward the back of the house. Toys were picked up. The radio was turned down low. Even her voice became softer. By 6:15, the house was ready. Not for a party. For silence. Women's magazines of the time described this as good homemaking. Some called it emotional hospitality. Many wives simply called it everyday life. The idea was simple. A working man returned home tired. The home was expected to become a place of calm the instant he arrived. Noise, complaints, arguments, or excitement were seen as signs that a wife was failing to manage her household properly. The pressure to maintain that peace could be intense. A husband who complained that his home was stressful or disruptive often found people willing to listen. Family doctors, counselors, and community leaders sometimes treated household tension as a problem the wife was expected to solve. Today, people spend billions on products that block noise and create quiet spaces. Back then, the silence cost no money at all. But maintaining it required constant effort, and breaking it could bring consequences few women wanted to face. Before we reach rule number 3, subscribe if you haven't already. This channel goes where the history actually is. The first 3 rules could be seen from the street, checked by neighbors, discussed over fences. But the rules with the highest stakes lived behind closed doors. They were quieter, harder to prove, and far more dangerous to break. She was not supposed to talk about them. Most women didn't. The next 3 are those rules. Rule number 3 was not about manners, or appearance, or keeping a quiet house. It was about money. In Baltimore, 1958, a woman sits at her kitchen table after dinner. From the grocery money, she has quietly saved $3 each week. Not much, but over 18 months it has become something worth protecting. She folds the bills into a handkerchief and hides them at the back of a drawer. She is not saving for a vacation. She is not saving for a new dress. She is saving because she wants one thing that belongs only to her. Then one day, her husband finds it. The question is not where the money came from. The question is why she hid it. For many married women, that question carried real weight. Before the 1970s, a woman's financial life was often tied directly to her husband's. What she earned, saved, managed, or spent was rarely seen as fully separate from him. The household budget may have passed through her hands, but ownership was another matter. That reality shaped daily life in ways many people now find hard to imagine. Today, entire industries encourage women to build wealth, open accounts, invest, and plan for the future. But 2 generations ago, financial independence was often out of reach. The handkerchief in that drawer was not just a hiding place. It was a small emergency exit, in a world with very few doors. Rule number 2 controlled something most people never think about. The simple act of leaving the house. In Newark, New Jersey, 1957, a woman wants to attend an evening lecture at the public library. She has been looking forward to it for weeks. But when her husband asks where she is going, she gives a different answer. My sister's. The lie comes easily. Not because she enjoys lying, but because she already knows which answer will be accepted and which one will start an argument. Over time, this becomes a skill. A quiet calculation. A way of managing daily life. For many women, freedom of movement was not as simple as opening the front door and walking out. A reason was expected. An explanation was expected. Sometimes approval was expected too. The idea was deeply woven into the culture of the time. A wife who came and went too freely could attract questions, suspicion, even gossip from people who believed she was neglecting her duties at home. So many women learned to move carefully. Not dramatically. Not rebelliously. Practically. Today, an evening drive, a visit to a bookstore, or a trip across town often requires no explanation at all. But within living memory, that freedom could be conditional. The women who quietly worked around that rule were not trying to make history. They were simply trying to make room for themselves. And the final rule may have been the hardest of all. Rule number 1 held all the others together. It was the rule that said, whatever happened inside the home stayed inside the home. There is a photograph from 1961. A woman stands on the steps of a courthouse in Cleveland. A manila folder is tucked under one arm. A small suitcase rests beside her feet. She is not looking back. She is looking ahead. She has just filed for divorce. People told her not to do it. They said nobody would believe her. They warned her she could lose everything she had spent years building. She filed anyway. For many women, speaking openly about problems inside a marriage carried its own risks. Complaints could be dismissed. Concerns could be explained away. A woman who admitted she was unhappy was often treated as the problem rather than the person asking for help. The message was clear. Manage it. Endure it. Do not talk about it. That silence protected every other rule on this list. It protected the expectations, the pressures, and the system itself. But eventually, some women stopped staying silent. They spoke. They left. They challenged rules that had seemed permanent. The women who followed these rules were not necessarily happy. They were skilled at surviving them. And the women who broke them were not failures. They were the generation that changed the future, one broken rule at a time. If you have not subscribed already, do it now. This channel goes where the history actually is. And before you leave, pick one thing from this list that surprised you. Tell it to someone else. That is how forgotten history survives. The next story is waiting.